In the early hours of October 8, 2002, Aileen Wuornos sat awake on her thin, worn-out mattress, knowing these were her final hours. Branded America's first female serial killer and nicknamed the Damsel of Death, she had been convicted of killing Richard Mallory in 1992 and later admitted to 6 more murders. But unlike most on death row, Aileen didn't fear the end. She welcomed it. Her execution wasn't a punishment to her, at least not after spending a decade on death row. It was freedom. After a lifetime of pain and violence, she saw death as her only escape. As time continued its march, it left behind only one certainty. She was ready for it all to end. This morning was no different from any other on death row. Scrambled eggs, toast, and milk, as usual. Aileen had long made her peace with it. Earlier that year, she had accused prison staff of contaminating her food with dirt, saliva, and urine. She claimed to have overheard them plotting to push her to take her own life or assault her before the execution. But with only one day left, none of it mattered anymore. At noon, Aileen was told that 2 final efforts to halt her execution had failed, one from a Tampa attorney, the other from an Ohio advocacy group, both questioning her mental competency. Wuornos hadn't fought the sentence herself. In fact, she had waived her appeal rights earlier that year, insisting on speeding up her execution, a move that raised doubts about her sanity. Only last month, Aileen's final appeals attorney, Rag Singhal, raised concerns about her mental state, prompting a temporary stay from Governor Jeb Bush. But after psychiatrists confirmed she understood her actions, the stay was lifted. She knew exactly what she was doing, said State Attorney John Tanner. It was a hard day, Singhal reflected, because no matter what, she wanted to die. For Wuornos, the verdict wasn't defeat. It was the end she'd been waiting for. At 3 p.m., Aileen Wuornos sat down with filmmaker Nick Broomfield for what would be her final interview, part of his documentary, Aileen, Life and Death of a Serial Killer. In the weeks leading up to her execution, Wuornos had spoken to Broomfield about being taken away to meet God, Jesus, the angels, and whatever lies beyond the beyond. When the interview began, she greeted him with a smile, pointing to her outfit.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Good.
Check out the orange shirt.
Referring to the standard uniform for death row inmates. When asked how life in prison was, she replied,
Well, here it's okay. It's all right. But, you know, you have your problems with some staff don't like you, Jess. Oh, you're a serial killer.
When Broomfield asked if she had made any friends, Wuornos admitted she mostly kept to herself.
No, I stick to myself. I just stick in the cell with myself. I don't even care about going outdoors. There's none out there. I don't smoke anymore.
So what's your day like? How does it start?
I spend 24/7 in the cell, watching TV, reading the Bible, writing letters to Dawn, sitting around doing a lot of thinking, preparing, going back in time, memory of everything I've been through in my life, and then just preparing for my death. Get all the tears out of me and stuff so I won't cry and jazz, you know. Because it is going to be a little bit tough when I go. Huh?
Getting all the tears out of you.
Yeah. Because I just don't want to be in the execution chamber crying my eyes out, and I'm not going to.
But as the conversation shifted, her tone darkened. Wuornos spoke of being tortured.
Hey, I was tortured at BCI. They had the intercom on in the room, and they kept lying that it wasn't on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997. Had a lot of trays that were attempted murder and everything. I had to wash all my food off. And then one day I didn't wash my food off, and I was sick for 3 weeks, almost died.
In a chilling moment, she reaffirmed her readiness for execution, delivering a final, damning accusation.
Let them know that I know that the cops knew who I was. After Richard Mallory died, I left prints everywhere, and they covered it up and let me kill the rest of those guys that turned me into a serial killer. I know they did.
Her anger boiled over, and she unleashed it on Broomfield.
You sabotaged my ass, society, and the cops, and the system. A woman got executed and was used for books and movies and shit.
With the camera still rolling, she spat out her final words on screen.
Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass. Okay, let's go.
Just hours later, in the solitude of her cell, Warno spent the time reflecting on her life and what lay ahead. Little else transpired during these moments, as a strange calm began to settle over her, replacing the erratic behavior that had defined her for years. She had long maintained that she killed the men in self-defense while being raped and assaulted, though later she recanted, saying she wanted to make peace with God. "I'm someone who seriously hates human life and would kill again," she admitted. After a decade on death row, death had become something she eagerly awaited. However, she continued to rail against her treatment in prison, complaining about strip searches, tight handcuffs, door kicking, frequent window checks, low water pressure, mildew on her mattress, and the officers' catcalling, which she described as pure hatred towards her. Warnos even threatened to refuse food and showers when certain officers were on duty. Her attorney emphasized that she simply wanted to be treated humanely until the day of her execution. In the end, after her outbursts in the interview, Warnos settled onto her bed and drifted into an early sleep, as if surrendering to the inevitable. There were no last phone calls, no visits from family or friends. She had severed those connections long ago. Left utterly alone, she faced her final hours in complete solitude. Eileen woke earlier than usual, just hours before her execution. Prison spokesman Sterling Ivy reported that she asked for a towel and washcloth to freshen up. According to him, Warnos declined the traditional last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and instead chose a simple cup of black coffee. In those final hours, she counted down the time in silence and solitude, all alone, lying down, sitting, reading, and relaxing as she awaited her fate. At around 9:30 a.m., a crowd of supporters and opponents of the death penalty gathered outside the prison, though they were outnumbered by corrections officers. Inside, Warnos was escorted from her cell to the death chamber, with guards ensuring her secure transport. Once inside, she was strapped to a gurney with 2 intravenous lines hooked to her arms. 32 witnesses held their breath as the heavy curtains parted to reveal her in the chamber. "We can testify that lethal injection is certainly a more humane way to terminate life than the electric chair," said State Attorney John Tanner, who had prosecuted her case. In her last psychiatric exam, she expressed relief that Florida had abolished the electric chair. In a striking final statement, Warnos declared, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back. Like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back. I'll be back." This bizarre proclamation highlighted her troubled mental state and served as a chilling reminder of her complex psyche. Previously, she had urged the Florida Supreme Court to proceed with her execution, stating, "I would prefer to cut to the chase and get on with it. Taxpayers' money has been squandered and the families have suffered enough." Then, the execution began. A guard pressed the buttons to release the lethal chemicals into her veins. Warnos stared at the ceiling, swallowing repeatedly, her eyes watering, but she showed no emotion. Minutes ticked by as a small air conditioner hummed from the opposite wall. The silence in the chamber was absolute. None of the witnesses spoke, coughed, or even sighed. The air in the room was heavy, thick with heat. Her skin turned pale as the poison did its work. After about 8 minutes, the attending physician gave a nod when the warden asked if she had expired. The warden picked up a phone, presumably to inform the governor, though no one could hear his words, as the audio system had been cut off after Warnos' final statement. With a second nod, the curtain was drawn. Eileen Warnos was officially pronounced dead at 9:47 a.m. She was 46 years old. Reactions to her death were mixed. Some believed her execution was justice served. Others saw it as the tragic end of a deeply troubled life, shaped by abuse and abandonment, a life that spiraled into darkness and led to serial killings. What do you think? Was Eileen Warnos a cold-blooded killer or a victim of circumstance who never had a chance? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe for more stories.